when I came over here, I was in my mid-20s.
Right.
The first time I really came over here. You know, I had a whole bunch of weird paranoid suspicions about what the hell was going on because there was a lot of stuff I couldn't understand.
Right.
And nobody was really bothering to explain it to me.
They don't.
And and I formed a bunch of opinions about the town and about the people in it.
Problem is, a lot of people just don't understand how the system works. That's really the problem. Everybody in the damn industry knows, but nobody wants to be the first to accept the liability.
Mel Gibson bought a one-way ticket back into the spotlight, and Hollywood is not happy about it. For years, the industry had him buried, blacklisted, ridiculed, written off as a cautionary tale. The man who once directed one of the highest-grossing films of all time was suddenly persona non grata, and nobody could fully explain why. Sure, there were controversies, there were headlines, but something about the official story never quite added up. Now it does. Videos of Mel speaking out about what he witnessed inside Hollywood, going all the way back to the late 90s, are spreading everywhere online, and people are not dismissing it this time. Because the backdrop to all of this is the Epstein files, over 3 million documents, videos, and images released by the DOJ, giving the public a look at what the most powerful people in the world were actually doing behind closed doors. The details in those files are so disturbing that major outlets are still struggling to report on them in full. And right in the middle of all of it, Mel Gibson's name keeps coming up. Not as a perpetrator, as a witness, as someone who apparently saw things early in his career that made him refuse to play along, and who paid a massive professional price for that refusal.
And and my assistant was there, and he left because he couldn't stand it anymore.
Yeah.
The air had turned cold.
Yeah.
And then he left, and I wanted to leave. And because I knew that I didn't want to work with him.
Yeah.
And he was getting scary.
Yeah.
And then I turned around, and it was on top of the Peninsula Hotel. I turned around to avoid his steady gaze at one point.
Yeah.
And I was looking at a building with the top of the sixes on it. So there was a huge illuminated triple six in red.
Yeah.
And I went from that to that to that, and he started smiling.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh no, Chris Walken is the Antichrist, you know?
Word spreading through entertainment circles suggests that his blacklisting had nothing to do with his public controversies and everything to do with the fact that he wouldn't participate in what was going on behind the scenes. That's a very different story than the one Hollywood told us for 2 decades. So who exactly is Mel Gibson in all of this? What did he say? What did he see? And why is the timing of all this hitting so differently now that the Epstein files are out in the open? Stick around, because this story goes deeper than most people realize, and it's only getting started. To understand why Mel Gibson's name carries so much weight in this conversation, you have to go back to the beginning. He didn't grow up inside the Hollywood machine. He came in from the outside, a young Australian actor who hit it big fast with the Mad Max franchise, and then Lethal Weapon, and suddenly found himself sitting at the same tables as the most powerful people in the entertainment industry. He was in his mid-20s, wide-eyed, and completely unprepared for what that world actually looked like up close.
We're like, surely that couldn't be, because the whole place can't be like, you know, Weird Town, you know, where the stranger wanders in and all the people are in the bar and they all shut up when he looks at them, and, and they tell you don't go to the house on the hill, and it's like that.
By his own account, in videos that are now circulating widely, the things he witnessed in those early years genuinely shocked him. Not because he was naive about human nature, but because of how normalized it all seemed to everyone else in the room. He described being surrounded by people who acted like what was happening was just part of the lifestyle, part of the deal, the price of admission for playing at that level. He didn't pay it, and that decision, according to people close to him, changed everything about how his career was managed from that point forward. Sources familiar with the industry during that era say Gibson was quietly flagged as someone who wasn't cooperative, someone who asked too many questions and made the wrong people uncomfortable.
And then you go away and you think, no, I was wrong. I mean, that's insane thinking. I'm paranoid. I imagined that stuff. That couldn't be the reason for why so-and-so was acting like. Could it? And then you find out later on the track that you were exactly on track with a lot of this stuff. Not specifically on track, but that you could, that some of your worst nightmares were real at the time, and you think,
That's not the kind of reputation that gets you more work in Hollywood. That's the kind that gets doors closed in your face without anyone ever explaining why. He kept working for a while, obviously. The Passion of the Christ in 2004 was a massive moment, a film he had to fully finance himself because not a single major studio would touch it. Think about that. One of the most commercially successful directors of his generation couldn't get a meeting. And when the film made hundreds of millions of dollars anyway, the industry's response wasn't to welcome him back. It was to come after him harder. That tells you something.
There was like Hollywood resistance to that movie. Like people didn't like that you were making it. It seemed like.
Yeah, there was a lot of opposition to it, and I don't know. I think if you ever hit on that subject matter, you're gonna get people going, because
Of course.
it's big subject.
Because there's resistance, first of all, from secular Hollywood, where for whatever reason, Christianity is the one religion that you're allowed to disparage.
I wanted to illustrate the extent of the sacrifice Christ made. So I felt that to do a film like that, and my own experience contemplating over the years on the Passion, my imagination soared, and there are readings on the matter that kind of brought home the dreadful reality of how bad it was. And I just wanted to put that on film to give people maybe a new look and to sort of bring another theological perspective to it that perhaps they hadn't thought of before.
The anti-Semitism allegations that followed the release of The Passion of the Christ were loud, coordinated, and came from some very specific corners of the industry. Critics didn't just review the film. They went after Mel personally, painting him as dangerous, hateful, someone whose voice needed to be silenced. And a lot of people bought it. Because when the machine decides to bury someone, it does it thoroughly.
All these different religions until it comes to Christianity. And for whatever reason, that represents like white male, whatever it represents, colonialism, whatever it represents, it's negative.
Yeah, sure, it's gotten a bad rap, and people do feel free to beat up on it. Even I do when I see it's like, when it's not fair, or when I think it's off.
Right.
Like, when they appoint some cardinal in some diocese and he's been covering up for like people who are child molesters.
Yes.
Or, like Theodore McCarrick or Cardinal Wuerl or those kind of guys. I mean.
Or the Pope.
Yes, absolutely. I'm
Benedict.
Not Benny. Well, he was covering up, but so is the guy now.
Is he really?
Well, yeah. It's not great. Every single one of those guys died rather than deny their belief. And nobody dies for a lie. Nobody.
Right.
Then came 2006, the DUI arrest, the recorded rant, the fallout.
He became uncooperative, profane, threatening, at times violent, banging himself against the car, inside the car, tried to escape. The Jews are responsible for all the wars, asking the deputy, was he Jewish?
And absolutely no favoritism to the suspect was shown.
The sheriffs lied. They just flat out lied.
Levin says the department changed reports and covered up for a celebrity who supports L.A. Sheriff Lee Baca and his charities.
It's really kind of outrageous for them to act like there's no cover-up here. Of course there's a cover-up.
In a written statement, Gibson blamed the disease of alcoholism and said, "I am deeply ashamed of everything I said, and I apologize to anyone who I have offended."
It was ugly, no question. Mel himself has never denied that it was a low point. But here's where it gets interesting. The way Hollywood responded to that moment wasn't just disappointment, it was relief. Like they had finally been handed the perfect public reason to finish what they had already started. Every project dried up. Every relationship in the industry went cold overnight. The narrative was set, and it was set fast. Too fast, some people now argue. Because while all of that was playing out in the press, something else was happening quietly in the background.
His whole opinion about women on film, from beginning to end, is very brief. He says, women on film, either naked or dead. Both is better. And it's like, whoa, The man has got a spiritual malady for a start. I mean, the scary thing is that I think a lot of people think that. Maybe not to that extreme. There are people, well-meaning people. Now, this is what I mean by actually starting to swim up or downstream with the rest of the salmon. You know, eventually, if you stay here long enough, you'll find yourself doing that. And you have to. There's a way of doing it without doing it.
The same network of powerful men that Mel had reportedly refused to associate with in his early career were still very much operating, still throwing the same parties, still flying on the same planes, still appearing in the same circles as a certain financier whose name we now all know very well. Epstein's world and Hollywood's world were not separate things. They overlapped in ways that are only now becoming clear as the files continue to be analyzed. Several of the locations tied to Epstein's operations were also tied to entertainment industry events, private gatherings, and networking functions that were completely above board on the surface. The guest lists from some of these events read like a who's who of film, music, and media. Mel Gibson's name is not on those lists, and that absence is starting to look a lot less like coincidence and a lot more like a choice he made a very long time ago. Here's where the plot twist hits, and it's a big one. For years, the story the public was fed was that Mel Gibson was Hollywood's villain, the cautionary tale, the guy whose ego and personal demons derailed a legendary career. And most people accepted that story because the press repeated it so many times it started to feel like fact. But the Epstein files are forcing people to re-examine a lot of things they thought they knew, and Mel's story is high on that list. Because here's what's becoming clear. The men who had the smoothest, most uninterrupted careers during that same era, the ones who never got canceled, never got blacklisted, never had a single door closed on them, a disturbing number of them are showing up in those files, not on the fringes, right in the middle of it. Meanwhile, the guy Hollywood spent 2 decades calling unstable and dangerous apparently spent those same 2 decades refusing invitations that a lot of his peers were happily accepting. People close to Mel have said for years that he tried to warn others, not in press conferences or interviews, because nobody was giving him a platform for that. But in private conversations, in the videos now circulating online, and in the subtext of projects he pushed for that the industry kept blocking. The Passion of the Christ wasn't just a religious film. People who know Mel say it was partly his way of putting something true and meaningful into the world at a time when everything around him felt corrupt and hollow.
I'll think, fuck it, and you'll resent it for a little while, and you have to let it go. Otherwise, you'll eat yourself alive. And I think it takes that kind of cockroach resilience to survive in this town. No matter how strong you are going to be affected by this place.
He also reportedly spoke to younger actors coming up through the industry, pulling them aside and giving them a heads up about what certain invitations actually meant and what saying yes would eventually cost them. Some listened, some didn't. The ones who didn't tend to have very complicated legacies right now. And the ones who did? A few of them have quietly come forward to back up Mel's account in recent weeks, which is adding serious weight to everything he's been saying.
You believe that children are being abused by in Hollywood.
Absolutely.
So why are you sitting down talking to me? Why aren't you sitting down with the police right now?
I've told the police. I sat there and I gave them the names. They're on record. They have all of this information, but they were scanning Michael Jackson. All they cared about was trying to find something on Michael Jackson.
Who you said, by the way, did not.
Who Michael was innocent.
You've said you've had death threats.
Yes.
Because you have this information
yes.
and have threatened to expose it. Another reason, I think, to go to police. That's a crime, to threaten someone's life.
I've gone to the police with that as well.
What would be wrong with going to the police now again?
There's a statute of limitations, Matt, in the state of California, which protects people where the movie industry is, conveniently enough, in California. That's the seriousness of this, because if I were to go to the police, I would be the one who's getting sued.
The voices backing Mel up aren't nobodies either. A few of them have genuine credibility inside the industry, people who were there during the same era, who moved in the same circles, and who have their own reasons for staying quiet until now. The fact that they're speaking at all says something. People don't take that kind of risk without feeling like the moment has finally arrived, where the truth is harder to suppress than it used to be. And that moment feels very real right now. The Epstein files didn't just expose one man. They pulled back the curtain on an entire system, a network of access and protection that kept certain people untouchable for decades while others got destroyed for far lesser sins. The math on that starts to make a very different kind of sense when you look at who was connected to that network and who wasn't. Mel Gibson wasn't connected, and he paid for it in the most public way possible. His reputation shredded, his career dismantled, his name turned into a punchline. While the people who were connected kept collecting awards and producing films and sitting on the boards of the same foundations that were supposedly protecting children. That contrast is what's driving the conversation online right now. People are angry, not just about what the files reveal, but about how long the misdirection worked, about how effectively the industry pointed the finger at someone like Mel while covering for people whose actual behavior was exponentially worse. The videos of Mel speaking about what he witnessed are being watched millions of times. People who dismissed him for years are going back and listening differently now. Because context changes everything, and the context around his fall from grace looks completely different in the light of what's now been made public. What he described seeing as a young man in Hollywood, the rituals, the pressure, the culture of silence, it lines up with details from the files in ways that are difficult to ignore. So where does all of this leave us? Mel Gibson spent 20 years being the villain in a story that Hollywood wrote specifically to discredit him. And now, with millions of pages of documents out in the open and voices from inside the industry finally speaking up, that story is falling apart fast. The man they buried wasn't the problem. He was someone who refused to be part of the problem, and they made him pay for it publicly while protecting the people who deserved scrutiny all along. That's not a small thing. That's a complete inversion of the narrative most of us grew up believing. Whether you've followed Mel Gibson's career for decades or this is the first time you're really sitting with his story, one thing is hard to argue with. The timing of his blacklisting, the people who orchestrated it, and the names now surfacing in the Epstein files all point in the same direction. And Hollywood is very, very quiet about it. If this video made you think, drop a comment below with your take. Like the video if you think more people need to hear this story. See you in the next one.